Hello, guys. Welcome to the 4P podcast. I'm your host, Michael Paterno, and we have an amazing episode today, episode 98, with one of my favorite people in the world, our teaching pastor at Suncoast Community Church, Dr. Troy Doucet. He has a double master's in philosophy and religious studies, and a doctorate from his doctorate is from University of Texas at Dallas. And so like to welcome Troy. This is let's hold on one more thing. Returning guest and friend of the show.
Yeah.
Second person, first person to return back to the podcast.
Nice.
So that's very exciting. So guys, we just this is an episode that I've been wanting to do with you because I've always wanted to. My thought process on all this Israel stuff, religious stuff, church stuff, celebrity pastor stuff, all this bullshit that all these people, it's just everything that's been going on through the church and the propaganda and the guys over at Religious Business, what they're doing, and Julie Roy's what she's doing, and
it's an interesting time in Christianity, man. It's an interesting time to be alive. Like it's obviously very very controversial and problematic, but it's also very exciting because of what opportunities on the horizon are opening up for like true like theological, philosophical, political discussions to kind of release some of these untruths that have been propagated for so long. And so it's both exciting and troublesome. So
it's the great thing about you is how you. One thing I've told you that I love, I always told you, if it wasn't for you, I would never go to church.
Thanks, man.
I would never, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't go to church. I would just stay home, read my Bible, pray with my family, read the teachings of Jesus, read all the things that Jesus was doing back in those times when he was walking on this earth.
That's right. And try to model that, right? Try to live that out as best we can,
Yeah, because like you say, Jesus already is inside of us.
Yeah, that Christ spirit, man. That's what we teach. It's that. I mean, even that's what my whole dissertation is about, Michael. It's all about, we've turned Christianity into a sort of intellectualized propositional faith. So X plus Y equals XY. And it's very cool if you're looking for religion or even Christianity to bring you a certain level of certitude about it. But that's been my argument from day one. If I'm absolutely certain of something, then I don't need any faith. You dig what I'm saying? Like, faith, the opposite of faith is not doubt. The opposite of faith is certainty. And it's funny, man. Like I was invited. One of my good buddies had a birthday party just a couple of weeks ago, and he invited me to go. And I was kind of reluctant, man. But he's a whiskey guy like I am, so I knew he'd have some good whiskey out. And Esther was out of town. My wife was out of town, and she was actually in Dallas. So I said, man, I'm going to go. So I showed up, and all of his buddies were there from his work, and they all attend a different denominational church. Like Suncoast is non-denominational, but they all go to a church that's very fundamentalist, very, very literal. The Bible is the absolute truth, word of God, and all these things.
Yeah.
And Suncoast, man, in our community has a reputation, like they call us the heretical church, And I say, well, today's heresy is tomorrow's truth. That's always been the case.
Right.
And so they started asking me questions like, oh, so you're a pastor at Suncoast? I said, yeah. They're like, oh, you could tell. Like, I said, oh,
you got tattoos.
I got tattoos and I'm drinking whiskey. And they asked me, they said, well, what do you believe about the Bible? We heard you guys don't believe in the Bible. I said, well, belief, like, what do you mean? I said, I teach from the Bible every week. Like every Sunday I teach from the Bible. And I said, the word belief is a loaded word, dude. Like, again, for you, it's propositional. Like, what have I intellectually ascended to and accepted as absolute truth, as certain? And I said, for me, that's not how I approach the Bible. And they said, well, what do you believe? Like, is the Bible the word of God? And I said, well, again, I don't know what you mean by that. Like, because the Bible has lots of inconsistencies and lots of contradictions in it. And if you're thinking that the word of God is absolutely pure and true from cover to cover, then the Bible does not meet that standard or criteria at all. But I
You
said,
said something about that in a sermon a couple of weeks
yeah.
ago.
And I said, look, man, I said, I would expect variance. I said, but the contradiction doesn't bother me. Like for you, it probably does, because contradiction means there is no certainty. But when I see contradiction, it doesn't rattle my cage, because I'm not focused on certainty. I'm focused on mystery. God has to confound the human mind. And so I said, I believe the Bible is the word of God insofar as I live it, not just believe it. So you heard me say before, it's not, I don't care what you believe. I care how you believe, how you be living as opposed to what you be believing. And so they said, well, what does that mean? You believe Jesus is the Son of God? I said, and again, dude, they were just dumbfounded by my response. I said, I choose to believe that. And they backed it. They said, well, what do you mean? I said, bro, if I could prove Jesus is the Son of God, if I could prove he was crucified, buried, and absolutely rose again from the dead, I said, then I don't need any faith in Jesus at all. It's already answered. And so I know there was a man named Jesus from Nazareth. I know he was crucified by the Romans. I know he was placed in the tomb. And I said, but there is a mystery surrounding the resurrection. And I said, I choose to believe he rose from the dead based on faith, not certainty. And dude, they just could not wrap their minds around it. They said, man, I said, let me give you an example. I said, everything about my belief in the Bible has to correspond to reality, the reality that I live in every freaking day of my life. And I said, and guess what does not correspond to reality? A dead man coming back from the grave. I've never seen it. I've never witnessed it. I don't think I ever want to see it or witness it. Like, as much as I loved my grandfather back in Louisiana, dude, he was the guy who showed me how to be a man and work. If that dude would have sat up in his coffin casket in that funeral home, bro, I'd have been out the door. I'd have ran out the door, no matter how much I love him, because something would have been off in the nature of things. And I said, but here's what does correspond to reality, to certainty for me, is that what Jesus represented, love and kindness and standing up for the marginalized and the oppressed in the world and standing against those who want to see themselves as superior. Like, he stood against those things. You can't kill those things. You can't kill love. You can't kill truth. You can't kill kindness. As much as you try to pile propaganda or politics or dirt on top of it, it comes back to life. It comes back to the light. And I said, that's what Jesus' resurrection means to me at the deepest level, is that no matter how much I try to kill love, it's coming back. No matter how much I try to hide truth, it's coming to light. And I said, the part about the physical resurrection of Jesus is something I choose to believe because of how it makes sense to me and how I want to live. And so I said, well, here's another example. I said, like the feeding of the 5,000, like when Jesus is preaching on the mountainside and 5,000 people come to hear him. His disciples come to him, and I'm telling this to these guys, dude, their minds are being blown. The disciples come to him and they say, yo, Jesus, bro, all these people are here and they're getting hungry. Now, at that moment, Jesus could have said, oh, sit back, boys, watch this. Hold my beer. Hold my
wooden cup.
Yeah, hold my yarmulke or whatever. Yeah. And then, boom, he could have made it rain manna again if he's God, right? He could have solved the hunger problem right there. And I said, but why doesn't he do that? And these guys are looking at me. I said, most people want to defend the Bible, just not read the damn thing. You know what I'm saying? Right. In that text, what does Jesus say? He looks at his disciples, and instead of saying, all right, boys, I got this, watch this. He looks at him and he goes, you feed them. You feed them. And they go, we don't have anything to give, Jesus. And what happens? A young boy walks forward with his lunch that he packed for this occasion. And he says, I don't have much, Jesus. I have 5 loaves and 2 fish, take my lunch. And Jesus says, start passing it out, watch what happens. And then it multiplies. Now, to most Christians who are of a more sort of literal fundamentalist bent, they'd be like, that's the miracle. God multiplied that. And I go, so yeah, that could be one way to interpret that passage. God bailing out a bunch of selfish assholes who probably brought lunch too, but we're going to share. No, what's mine is mine. But when they see this little boy willing to sacrifice his own lunch to help somebody else, maybe the greatest miracle is not that God just multiplied this magically, but God started changing people's hearts, going, hey, yo, Rebecca, we have some food too. Let's share ours. Hey, you know what, Sam? We have some food too. Let's share ours. And the miracle is not God bailing out a bunch of selfish pricks. It's God changing those hearts to say, we'll share ours too. And that's how it multiplied. I said, that corresponds to reality to me. And that is more transformative in its hermeneutic, in its interpretation.
Well, I think with that story, like I got these forbidden clothes t-shirts.
Oh yeah.
And I got that one t-shirt where Jesus is flipping the table and the money's going everywhere. And it says the original noticer. What you just said right there, when he's feeding, hey, go pass this out and then watch what happens. That's a perfect example of the congregation in most of these churches today. They're waiting for somebody to lead them instead of them leading themselves.
That's exactly, dude. You're nailing it.
Right. So when, I love listening to Andy Frisella's podcast, great podcast. And he's always talking about, and I'm going to talk to the men here in this particular situation. You got Jesus flipping the tables. You got Jesus telling the apostles, go pass out the food and then watch what happens. Basically, in today's terms, we as men, we need to step it up. We need to push back against this evil, satanic, Zionist rhetoric, right? Because not enough men are coming out and speaking. You got pastors all over this country. I've been to tons of church. I was an over-the-road truck driver for 3 years.
Yeah.
Stepped foot in all different churches across the country. Everybody is spewing the same Israel propaganda and pushing this narrative to these people. I spent 3 years at a church in Frisco that you know.
Oh yeah.
And it was a bunch of men who couldn't. They put the pastor on the pedestal. Well, the pastor said this, so it's true. The pastor does that. The pastor drives a Ferrari. The pastor is a private jet. Yep. Pastor said, I got to tithe over and above. Pastor wants me to pay his church off, so I got to make sure when I write my check, it's more than 10% because I also got to pay the church off, so now I got to tithe 30%. The pastor said, if I don't tithe, then I don't honor God, which that's the most crazy saying to me, is that I don't honor God if I'm not tithing.
That's right.
When people, like, doing God's work is like going out, making a ton of money and giving back to the community, doing things for people, paying somebody's rent, like we talk about.
That's right.
Buying somebody's groceries, paying somebody's electrical bill, doing things throughout the community. Like Jesus, when you read his teachings in the Bible, and that's what I try to focus on when I'm reading, is just like the parts where he's talking, trying to take all that in.
Yep.
And he basically wants people to just, even in that time, he wanted people to just go out and do their thing. Be the best you that you could be and go into the community and be a good-hearted person.
Absolutely, dude. So we've boiled Christian.
And be a savage.
Oh yeah, dude. Like, be savage, dude, in your and that's the thing, dude. Like, Christianity today, the way I see it in many, many churches, and I'm not going to generalize too much, but it's basically accept this and believe it. I accept Jesus as my savior, and I believe that he died for me and rose from the dead. And you're good.
I'm the pastor. I'm closer to God than you are. So because I said this, then it's true.
So I prayed this prayer. Now I'm good. No, dude, that's not, dude. It's not about accepting and believing. It's about awakening and becoming. I awaken to the Spirit of God that's always already within me. Like, that Spirit of God is in every human. Now, I'm not going to, you and I are a little different in this.
You just have to pull it out of you.
Like, you know way more than I do about the Zionist stuff and all that. And for me, when I hear the word Satan, I don't think of a being, right? The word Satan is Hasatan. It literally means like the adversary or the accuser. So I think of like that language for me, it puts us like a us versus them. And I get that language very well. But I kind of go, most people who believe a certain ideological framework, right? Because you have Jewish people in the world today who are deeply devout Jewish followers of Judaism. And they absolutely rebuke the Zionist movement. And they go, no, Judaism is religious, Zionism is nationalistic, and there are differences. But again, they call it, like, you can't call a Jew anti-Semitic because they're Jewish. But they call them now, there's new words, like they say the self-hating Jew or whatever. But in the terms of like Christianity, what it is Jesus is wanting to wake us up to our responsibility to one another. Go back to the Old Testament. When Cain kills Abel, what's the first question God asks Cain? Like, where's your brother? Like, where is he? And Cain asks this question to which God does not reply because it should be a self-evident answer. He goes, am I my brother's keeper? And God simply does not respond because the answer is an absolute frick yes, you are.
Yeah.
You think about that word responsibility, because everything I heard you say about men is men, we're dropping the ball on responsibility. Think about that word, bro. It's my ability to respond. That's all responsibility is. It's my ability to respond. And if I have an ability to respond to someone's need, I should do it. And you hear all this rhetoric, man, all this propaganda. Well, if I give that homeless guy $5, he's just going to go buy liquor again. That's not your problem.
Yeah.
That's not between, you don't get, and that's the thing, dude. We insert ourselves like, dude, think of this, dude, like I'm gonna blow your mind right here. The only kind of control God told us to have is self-control. That's it. And think about what
You just got to worry. You got to take care of
take
you.
care of yourself, bro. And when you understand who you are and my identity, I start to see that identity in all people. Dude, I said it before from stage. Like, I can vehemently disagree with an atheist guy or even a Zionist guy. But after like that second or third beer, if we're being honest with each other, we're going to be like, yeah, man, we don't really know. Bro. We don't really know for sure. And at the end of the day, what that does is it creates this human connection, the whole idea of community, where we see like there's more we have in common than we have in difference, dude. And that's the thing. Mm-hmm. My ability to respond is my responsibility. So you have these pastors who are literally, by the way they preach, removing responsibility from individuals and placing on them this word, conformity. Conform to this way of thinking. Conform. Right. Because, dude, I told this story a while back. Like, I was in my Jeep heading to the beach and my doors were off, my top was down. And here comes around the corner this homeless lady. And she was young, dude. She's probably early 30. Had a sign, anything helps. And like something spoke to me, dude, like help this woman. So I opened up my wallet, dude, and in it, all I had was a freaking $50 bill. And I went, man, that's a lot of money for me. Like, dude, I'm just a lowly pastor, bro. I'm not Kenneth Copeland. I'm not Keith. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's a tank of gas, dude. But I had an ability, right?
You don't got that celebrity pastor money.
No, I
don't
have
bro.
That celebrity pastor money. And if I did, I'd probably give it most away. But so I said, okay, live. You got to practice what you preach, bro. You have an ability to respond. And I said, all right. And she came around and I was waving it, out my door because we're at this red light. And, in Florida, dude, red lights are freaking long as hell. And she comes and she sees that it's a 50 and she's like, are you sure? And I said, here you go, sweetie. And she reaches for it. And I pulled back and I said, I want to tell you something. I said, I'm giving you this to let you know God has not forgotten you. God still loves you. God is not against you. God is not angry at you. And I said, use this to get yourself back in alignment with what God created you to be. Bro, she started like trembling, crying.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked in my rear view mirror, dude, and you know what I saw? Hands going out each window, like a ripple effect. All these money just hanging out the window. I've never seen that before. Just like the feeding of the 5,000. It took one person who responded according to their ability to let others see I have permission to do the same. And this is the thing about churches, dude. I'll say this. Churches are great at giving direction. I don't care if you're going to Elevate Life or you're going to Kenneth Copeland or whatever. Churches do a good job of giving us direction, but you know what they fail to do? They don't give us permission to go and be that in the world. Like, dude, church does not happen for me until I leave that building. What happens inside that building is to motivate me, to inspire me, to equip me, to challenge me. Between two Sundays is what I say. That's when the life of God happens in the life of the follower of Christ. Between two Sundays. Sunday is supposed to be not about that building or about that ministry. It's supposed to be about what comes from this moment into the real world. And that's my responsibility. So what I say is Sunday is just preparation for your ability to respond the rest of the week. And we've lost that, dude. We've lost that. We've lost this. It's particularly, like you said, with men, dude. It's no wonder why most churches have more ladies and women that are more active in the church than men, because men feel like this dude just wants my money. I'm working 9 to 5 every day, and yeah, I'm going to give a little bit to the church, but this dude's going to make me feel like a jerk if I don't give whatever percentage. And that's why it's something we don't pass a plate at all. We don't even talk about money because we don't need.
I've been to churches that will spend 45 minutes on a sermon just about tithing.
It's wild, dude.
It's crazy.
And you get this. You get.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
You get this again, where the whole idea of celebrity pastor comes from, dude. Like, there is a fine line between being a pastor who is popular because his message is resonating with people, and a pastor who is popular, but it bleeds into him believing he's untouchable. Like, dude, think about all the scandals, like with what Julie Roy's is doing, with what the religious business guys are doing. Like, they're shining lights on all of these instances where this pastor has gotten too big for his britches and he's thought, man, now I can just get away with whatever. And we're holding responsibility is always going to come from accountability. And that's what they're doing. And as men, dude, we got to be accountable for our family. And I think church is a good thing insofar as it does the right thing. And that's equipping men to be Christ-like in the world. Because you heard me say it from the church before. Like, so many people say, oh, I want to go to a church that's biblical, that teaches a biblical marriage, that teaches bro, the word biblical just means in the book. That's all it means.
Yeah.
Guess what's in the book? Yeah, you heard me say it the other day. Guess what? Owning slaves is in the book.
Yeah. I wanted to touch on that. You did that, all the contradictions, or you did like a couple of them.
Yep.
And it's something about killing, and I forgot what you said.
Killing your enemies is biblical.
Yeah.
But loving your enemies is biblical. But only one of those is Christ-like.
Right. Yeah, that's what you did a couple of those. It was good.
A couple of those just to kind of say biblical doesn't really hold the weight it once had.
Well, you've been one thing that I've enjoyed, and I pay attention to this. You've been dropping nuggets, and I don't know if some of the congregation picks it up or the people in the church pick it up, but I do. Like a couple of weeks ago, about 4 or 5 weeks ago, I think it was in Mic Drop Jesus. If y'all get a chance, go watch the series that Troy did at church. It was a 4 or 5 week series called Mic Drop Jesus. And you said when Jesus was born and lived in Palestine, and a lot of pastors will tell you that Jesus was from Israel. Well, Israel wasn't created until 1948, and biblical Israel was Jacob. My understanding of this, I'm not as knowledgeable on this as you are, but Jacob, when God gave Jacob a piece of land, Jacob changed his name to Israel, and the Jewish people of the Judea tribe lived in that part of, they lived in Israel, which was Jacob's territory that he owned of
Right, from his
Palestine.
father Abraham, right? So the Abrahamic covenant, right? And that's a distinction, dude, that's very important. Israel in the scriptures, it's not about simply saying, "Oh, this is a chosen people." It's covenantal. It's like God is making a covenant with people, and the
It
new,
was a person, not a place.
that's exactly right. And so these people, again, Dan McClellan does a great job of showing this. Like, think about this, dude. The Bible, the Old Testament, many, like, even in humanities, I'm a professor of humanities, and even in the humanities books, what they'll say is the nation of Israel, or the tribe of Israel, were the first to bring about monotheism. Like, no, like, this is incorrect. Jews were not monotheistic. They worshiped one God, but they believed in other gods. Why do you think the first of the 10 Commandments says, have no other gods before this one?
Right.
It's not saying there aren't any other gods that are worshipped. They're only saying there's only one Yahweh. There's only one, name. What did they say? Hashem. There's only one name, Yahweh. And so that's the idea here, is that from Yahweh, and then again, you read the Deuteronomic text, like, Yahweh actually inherits the Israeli people from another God. Like, it's really strange, dude, when you read the Old Testament.
Yeah, how many gods are there?
But when you think of, like, the land of Israel, like, you see the little strip now that's causing so much turmoil. Like, that's a made up state, bro. That's a made up piece of land. The
1948.
real land given to Israel from the Old Testament goes from Egypt to the Euphrates River. Like, it's a huge piece of land, which encompasses countries that occupy that land now: Iran, Iraq, Lebanon, some of Jordan, Syria. Like, so if you're talking about the nation of Israel, it's way bigger than what it is now. And so
Right.
you have to ask those questions, like, what are we even talking about here? Like, if we're talking biblical Israel. But for me, the Israel mentioned in the Bible is not the Israel we see now. Israel was all about those individuals who have entered into covenant with Yahweh God. And if you read the New Testament, Jesus, Paul opened up the whole idea of Israel not being just one chosen people, but those people who are under covenant with God through Christ, right? So that's the way we understand it. So there's a beautiful story, man. And again, it goes back to this idea of, like, God, the Spirit of God is within all humanity. They were interviewing this kid, man. I'll send it to you when I find it, man. Maybe you could post it. They were interviewing this man from Israel. He was an Israeli, born in Jerusalem, and was now living in California. And they asked him, they said, well, don't you want to go back, to your holy land, to the Holy Land? Don't you want to go back to the land of your ancestors? And blah, blah, blah. He goes, what are you talking? What land is that? And listen to what he said, dude. It's so beautiful. I get chills. He goes, the Holy Land is wherever I'm at. Wherever I plant my feet is the Holy Land, because the Spirit of God dwells with me and in me. Like, dude, think of the Aramaic prayer. Like, the Aramaic prayer is, may God be a blessing upon your children and your children's children and their children's children. Like, that's the blessing. And may his Spirit go before you, go behind you, go beside you, go within you. Like, what they're saying is, there is no place you can go where God's Spirit is not always already there. So this land, really, dude, you're having a conflict over a land that's been deemed holy, just historically. But what that guy, I forgot his name, the guy from California, what he established, dude, which I thought was beautiful, that no, bro, the Holy Land is wherever I go, because the God holy dwells within me.
Well, I've always thought I've always thought the saying God's chosen people was kind of idiotic, because all 8 billion people across the world, anybody born into this world is a chosen person from God.
Mm-hmm.
So why would only one group of people be God's chosen people?
Yeah.
But I wanted to touch base on I don't want to backtrack too much, but I've always, with the whole celebrity pastor thing and these pastors, I always feel like they have to, if you go back to the Johnson tax amendment with LBJ,
Mm,
they have to preach a certain, when LBJ was a senator of Texas back in the 50s before he became the president, before JFK was assassinated.
yeah.
He said when we pass this bill, the Johnson tax amendment, um we will use the Johnson tax amendment to get the churches to push the certain narrative and agenda and propaganda that we want them to push. And if the churches don't push this, we will then remove their tax breaks and all their funding from them, and they will no longer be a church. In the 80s, they changed from the Johnson tax amendment to the 501c3,
Hmm.
and then because the Johnson tax amendment's too rigid, just like in 1906, the Zionist Organization of America that got Louis Brandeis elected to the Supreme Court,
Oh yeah, yeah.
that was also
Oh yeah.
that was also too rigid. So in the 60s, after JFK got assassinated, they changed it to APAC
That's right.
and made it more not as noticeable as to what they're doing.
Yeah, Allison Weird talks about that piece in her book Against Our Better Judgment. She talks a lot about that. But again, my only critique of that, like I understand exactly where you're going. The problem with that, because again, it's not black and white, right? Because you have certain elements that fall within a 501c3 designation, nonprofit, that are not churches, right? That aren't necessarily pushing a Zionist propaganda, whatever. Like the Church of Scientology, right? Like
Mhm.
they don't have any sort of connection to Zionism. But here's the thing, dude. When the idea of Zionism is not a theological debate; it's political. Like
Right.
if you're a theologian, by any theologian worth his weight in scholarship would understand. Like when we talk about Israel, we're not talking about Israel of the Bible. We're talking about Israel, a nation state, right? That was created in 1948. That is
Right.
very distinct from the Israel of the Bible. Like again, you don't have to be
You can just read Arthur
yeah,
Balfour's
exactly.
letter.
You just read the history, you understand that. But there are certain theologians who want to sort of, I guess, sort of bring together that theology and that political stance because they do read that Israel is the Israel, and it's all these again what we call eschatological end times sort of thing. Even what Pete Head what's his war, the Secretary of War, whatever. I can't even pronounce his
Pete
name.
Hegseth.
That's
Pete Hegseth.
talking about like these generals talking about we need to do this in order to bring about the second coming of Christ. Like, for what bullshit? Like, no, dude, there is no rapture. There is no second coming of Christ in the way like the Left Behind books, bro, were a work of fiction, and ideas of rapture and tribulation and all this apocalyptic imagery and language. Like that's a recent theological development from like the 1830s, dude. Like,
That's man that and we have a lot to blame man. A lot of these things have come from man.
oh yeah, dude, this it's a all doctrines are man-made, dude. They're all
Yeah.
they're all man-made. The beauty of the Bible, like for me, I take the Bible seriously, but I don't take it simplistically. If that makes sense.
Hmm.
It is a complicated text, dude. It's very complicated. It's very nuanced, and language plays a huge part in it. Culture plays a huge part in it. History plays a huge part in it. And you can't just simply read it at face value. There's a new movement in evangelicalism called you just got to read the Bible at face value. Well, depending on what translation you're reading, the face value is going to be different because there are
Right.
certain translations that make it seem as though God not only knows the future, but God has predetermined the future. Whereas other ones say, no, the future is based upon what God's ideal is, like what God hopes for the future to be. And so those two things, if you read it at face value, you're going to get two very different values, you know?
Right.
And so the idea of marrying theology with politics is very, very dangerous, dude. But I understand, and this is the thing where my language toward these guys is not as maybe as scathing as yours might be.
Mhm.
I understand why they're doing it because they feel they're bringing about the coming of God's kingdom. And I said, the kingdom's already here. The kingdom's here. Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is within you. Heaven's not a place I just get to go to. It's a place I get to bring with me.
Right.
How do I bring it with me? Through love, patience, peace, kindness, joy, self-control. You know what I'm saying? All of those fruits of the spirit. Because you think about a tree, dude. Like think about a tree. There's so much agriculture replete throughout the Bible. Like a tree or a fruit tree doesn't eat its own plant, its own fruit. What's the fruit for? It's for someone else, right? So my fruit
Right.
of love and patience and justice and kindness is not just for me, it's for other people.
Right.
That's the purpose of bearing fruit, man. So I say this, dude, I used to be evangelical. Like I used to try to convict people with my words. It's funny, my podcast yesterday with Pastor Brett, I confessed something. I said, when I was a youth pastor, I remember I put up this counter during one of my sermons. It would count 1, 2, 3. And I told the kids, I said, you're probably wondering what this counter is up on the big screen. And I said, that's the number of people who are dying and going to hell right now. And kids were like, oh my God, because that counter was going up and up and up. And it was like, dude, now I look back and I go, man, what a shithead I was for doing that. But you live and you learn. But
Yeah.
the whole idea is you want people to respond, to what we say. You want people to grow. And a lot of times the misunderstanding of the scripture is, man, what kind of fruit are we growing? Because I don't want to convict people with my words anymore. I want to convince people with my life. Because
And your actions.
Exactly, because Christ likeness is not just an intellectual abstraction. It's an ontological action. It's what I do every day.
One of my favorite things is fill other people's cups and watch your cup get filled.
Yeah, bro. You can't outgive God. You can't outgive God.
And some people, it's really hard. Some people, they have the blinders on. It's really hard for them to take a step back and really invest time and invest just in time and words into other people and really try to add value to different situations, or really take a step back and really figure out, like, okay, why am I in this situation? Why does Jesus have me in this situation, or God have me in this situation? What do I need to learn? What am I trying to learn from? Like, taking something from the positive and the negative, and really try to help other people. And I think that's truly being Christ-like. It's not about how much you tithe or how much you give the church, or all that stuff. But I do want to touch base on because I really feel bad for the whole Jewish community as a whole.
Yeah.
And hopefully some of those, there's pages on X and on Instagram, Jews against Israel,
Yeah.
rabbis against Israel. There's millions of people that follow these pages.
Oh, yeah.
And there's one page on X, like the Voice of Rabbis or whatever, and they're always, every chance they have to post on Ted Cruz or Lindsey Graham or all these warmongers, they're like, hey, you guys are wrong, this is false, you guys are lying.
Yeah.
But you have what I say, you have about 1,000 evil people. And you've had this for hundreds of years. You have a lot of evil people hiding behind a group of innocent people who are kind of oblivious to what's going on because of things they've been told in the past.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite verses in the Bible, in Revelations 2 and 3, Jesus talks about there's going to be a lot of people that worship that there's going to be a lot of people that claim to be Jewish,
Yep.
that are not Jewish, and they worship the synagogue of Satan.
Yep. Yep.
And when you go back to Israel, Jacob,
Abraham.
and you go back to Abraham, and you go back to the tribe of Judea, all those Jewish people that were in the Judea tribe were all innocent Jewish people. It was the evil satanic or evil, I wouldn't say that I don't know if they're Jewish or not, but evil people that were hiding behind those people, and those were the people that were kicked out of 109 countries.
Yeah.
You got Randy Fine, who's always talking about Jews were kicked out of 109 countries. No. Jewish people weren't kicked out of 109 countries. It's the evil people that have been hiding behind the Jewish people, causing all this racket,
Yeah, bro.
that were kicked out of 109 countries.
Yeah, dude. Even one of the the old prime minister of Israel, Gilda Meir, said, "Look, I'm Palestinian." Like, she said that, dude. Like, my passport is Palestinian. We've lived in peace with the Muslims and the Christians for centuries. And the idea here is, man, like, whatever revelation is obviously using exaggeratory sort of language and apocalyptic language to be hyperbole, right? To say, man, they're like the synagogue of Satan. They're a synagogue of adversaries to the true Jewish heart, which is pointing people to the one true God, right? And it's sad to see, man. It's sad to see because, we do have people trying to speak out against this sort of radicalization of because using language as a weaponry, like, you can't speak out against Zionism because that in itself is anti-Semitic. But you have to differentiate between the two, and that's what's starting to happen. That sort of protective shield or layer is cracking and crumbling. But you think about the United States, dude, like where we live, like, yeah, dude, it's the greatest country I think ever, blah, 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 blah. I'm proud to be an American. But let me ask you this, dude. How many wars has China been in the last 100 years? Like,
0.
China's been in no wars.
How many wars has the Israeli government gotten people into?
Oh, that's the thing. The United States is what we're celebrating our 250th anniversary this year. Like,
yep,
we've only,
UFC
in the history of the United States, dude, I think I read, we've only had 16 years of peace in 250 years of existence. 16 years of peace. And you got to ask yourself, like, what's happening, dude? Like, what's really happening in the world? Like, I get, like, we go into conflicts to help the smaller oppressed countries, and I get that, man. Some of that accounts for that wartime stuff. But there's certain things, like, dude, like this war right now with Iran. Like, come on, man. Like, when you have the director of counterterrorism resigning and saying,
Joe Kent, right?
yeah, I cannot in good conscience support this. Like, this dude was MAGA to the bone. To the bone.
Well, that's like dumbass Marco Rubio last week. Oh, well, we got a report. We thought they were going to attack us, so we attacked them first.
Yeah, no, dude. You know how long
like,
you can go back, dude? Like, somebody put a reel together the other day of Netanyahu. How many times over the last 20 years, 30 years, he's saying they're weeks away.
40 years.
They're weeks away from having a nuclear weapon. They're weeks away. Like, bro, we're at 40 years. Like,
and I thought Trump went to Iran when he first got back into office to make a nuclear peace deal. Israel has the nukes. That's what John F. Kennedy was trying to stop.
Nobody's going to admit that, though. No one on that side
yeah.
admit that.
John F. Kennedy didn't want them to have nukes. As soon as he got assassinated and LBJ took the presidency, within like a year, they had nukes.
Away with the Federal Reserve. Like, yeah, dude, you don't. Yeah.
Yeah.
He signed his own death at that point. But the problem is, man, like, I get it. There's nothing inside of me, bro, and I'm just going to speak honestly. There's nothing inside of me that feels sorry for the regime that was killed in our bombing. Like, those were evil guys, dude. There's no doubt about it, bro.
There's evil people in every religion.
They were evil men. But what I do despise is my president not coming out and saying, we're going to do this, and this is how we're going to do it, and this is how we're going to get out of it. Like, we have no exit strategy, dude. We have none. The Strait of Hormuz is like blocked now. Gas prices are through the roof. Like, groceries are through the roof. My electricity bill is through the roof. And I go, for what? For what? Like, and you have the director of counterterrorism saying they pose no imminent threat to us at all. And I go, man, and now you want my brothers to go and die? For what? Like, dude, you put boots on the ground, dude. We already had. They won't even tell us how many Americans have died already. They won't even disclose that. That's the first time in history I've ever not seen how many men have died this far into the war. Like, dude, it's a shame. But at the same time, you kind of go, well, my faith and my trust is in God. And if what I believe to correspond to reality in Christ is true, love is going to win. Truth is going to win at any cost. And even if it's at the cost of people's certainty regarding, oh, this is the nation of Israel, sanctioned by God, chosen by God. Now, dude, some of that shit has to crumble in front of our eyes. And I think it is slowly but surely that edifice is going. Because I find it funny, dude, when we think about what people think about when we're talking about war. When you mention World War II, most people think about what? The Holocaust. And rightfully so. That should probably be the first thing in the forefront of our mind. However many millions of Jews were killed, right? That number is debated amongst scholars all over. But nobody stops and goes, yeah, man, that's awful what happened to the Jews and what Hitler did. But nobody says, how many Americans died now? How many?
Nobody ever talks about how many Christians died in the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia.
How many Russians died fighting the Nazis? How many Germans died? It's almost like no one gives a shit about who else died during this conflict. It's only a focus on one ethnicity that faced persecution in that time. When I go, man, and it's the same thing here at home, man. We only focus on one aspect of why the Civil War was fought. We don't really talk about how many died fighting to free people of color. Like that's an important calculation in what I call the ethicality of war. It's right. We're fighting a war for a particular purpose. Typically, it's a moral purpose, political purpose, whatever. But it all boils down to some sort of ethical, moral meaning, right? Democracy or whatever you want to call it. But I go, there are people who are dying on the side of the good guys to oppress people, and they get lost in the mix of, well, these people are more important for whatever reason. And I just think it's unfair. I just think, let's be consistent in our thought. Let's be consistent in our criticism. Let's be consistent in our theology. Let's be consistent in our Christ-likeness. Like consistency matters. Even in the gym, dude, like over discipline, over motivation, consistency is what transforms us into the best version of ourselves.
Well, the funny thing about this too, with this whole war with Iran is growing up, you always got told that Muslim people don't believe in God or Jesus. And I've talked to quite a few Muslim people through Instagram, some of my friends, and they all believe in Jesus. And the funny thing, well, it's not funny, but it's just truth. It's reality and it's truth. Jewish people don't believe in Jesus. There's nothing wrong with that. They believe in God. Christian, I believe in Jesus. Muslim people believe in Jesus. But every time there's a war going on in the Middle East, it's people that believe in Jesus that are dying.
Yeah, I saw he was a combat veteran. He was like a sergeant major or something. He says, in these wars, he said, I've had Muslims in those foxholes with me. I've had atheists in those foxholes with me fighting. He says, I've had every kind of person. But he said, you know what I've never had? He said, I don't ever remember having an Israeli soldier in those foxholes with me.
Yep.
And I went, man, that's a telling truth right there, dude. And
yep.
We send,
but we got to keep sending them billions of dollars, though.
Let's say, dude, we send billions and billions and billions of dollars. And I said, man, I was just asking for a little help with my student loan debt, brother. Like that's all I just wanted a little piece for student loan debt to help me out, And you get ostracized because of thinking that way. You get labeled these very pejorative terms. And in fact, no, man, I'm pretty consistent with my view. And there are people of the same ethnicity, same political sort of ideology that you have that go, no, there's something about this that's going off kilter,
Right.
And I'm pretty moderate, man. I'm pretty middle of the road. I'm like, man, I just want people to become their best self. And I want people to have the freedom to do what they want to do, so long as that freedom doesn't impinge upon my freedom and enjoyment in life. And being a pastor, you have to walk a pretty tight line between that, because our congregation, man, we have former Catholics, we have former charismatics, we actually have a couple of Jewish people who come to church. We have a Wiccan who comes to church. Like we have people who are self-proclaimed agnostics or atheists who come. And that's, for me, that's telling, because there is a truth that resonates, and they don't care. Even the atheist guys who come, who call themselves atheists, they say what we love about it is that you're not proclaiming this word to be divine. You're claiming that there are concepts and principles in this word that are always true. And that's the hard part of my job, is to mull out and dig out and think through, what is it about this story that is going to be true for everybody, that is going to be true for the tribal man in sub-Saharan Africa, to the businessman in New York City, to the countryman in South Louisiana, and to the everyday man like you and I living in Sarasota, Florida. Like, because that's what truth is, man. Truth is something that is going to apply to us all. And the moment that truth becomes exclusive to only one person or one people, then it's no longer true, and that's
Well, I always tell, when people come to me and they're like, hey man, like, I want to start reading the Bible, like, where should I start? And I'm like, just read Proverbs over and over again for a couple of months until you get bored. Because you can read Proverbs, and when I tell them, they're like, oh, well, why should I start in Proverbs? There's one for every day of the week.
Yep.
You can read it in 2 minutes
Yep.
every day. And it's literally teachings that's just going to help you go be a better person out in society.
That's right on, dude.
And they're like, well, what about going to church? What about tithing? What about... No, you don't need to do any of that shit.
I know.
Just read Proverbs and just be the best you can be. Go off into society and help and fill other people's cups and watch your cup get filled.
That's exactly right. And I would say, dude, start looking for God every day. Like, start looking for God, because we have such a misconception about how God works, dude. Like, we want to see God in the grandiose and in the extravagant, when God works in the mundane and the menial. Like, I went to Calusa the other day with a guy from church, man. He called me up and he was like, hey man, I know you're busy, but can I buy you dinner and a beer? And I said, sure, dude. And he was blown away that I would make time for him, like, it's just strange to me, dude. Like,
Most pastors won't.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, bro. Like, you come to Suncoast, like Larry and I are in the foyer shaking hands and hugging people's necks. And, you go to that's not happening at these other churches for the most part. And so he was blown away that I would actually meet him one-on-one, which I was like, dude, I'm here drinking beer, with you, and talk to me about what's going on. And he was like, bro, I hear what you say every Sunday. And I said, well, tell me your story. How'd you come to Suncoast? And he told me this. And he's like, man, Charlie Kirk got assassinated, made me think about things. And so I decided to call my buddy up, who I knew went to your church. So I went, because my mom found out I was going. So she asked me if she could come with me. So now I pick her up every morning at 8:30 to pick her up, and we go to church together. And I said, what, didn't your dad come? He goes, yeah, my dad promised, like, he said he'd never go to church, but he actually came to Christmas Eve and loved it, blah, 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 blah. And he's telling me all this. I said, awesome. He's like, man, I just don't see God the way you see God every day, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, I want to have your faith, And I said, oh, you don't want mine, bro. Mine's a pain in the ass. I said,
you got to have your own faith.
You want yours. And I said, let me stop you there, dude. I said, what do you see every day? He goes, man, I just see people trying to rip me off, because he owns his own business. And he's pretty successful. He's a young dude, bro. He's like 34, 35. And, people just trying to rip me off and this and that. I said, let me stop you. I said, I'm going to repeat back to you what you just told me. And I'm going to show you where I saw God in your story. Number one, you started coming to church. That's God working. No matter how you got there, whether it was because of Charlie Kirk's assassination or someone invited you, you decided to show up. Like, dude, you're hearing a message that is moving you in such a way that you keep coming back. That's how God works. I see God in that. He's like, oh. And I said, and then you just told me that you pick your mom up every Sunday at 8:30 a.m. to come to church with you, and then you go to brunch with her every Sunday after church. And I said, apparently you enjoy those times with your mom. He goes, wow, I love it. I said, that's God working.
Right.
And I said, and then you told me your dad said he would never go to church, but he came to Suncoast for Christmas Eve and he enjoyed it. That's God working. And I said, that's how God works, bro. Stop looking for God to regrow a blown off arm or to heal cancer or to make a paralyzed person walk or a person with autism not have it anymore. Like, God works in the little tiny shifts we make in our life that help us become our best self. And I said, my challenge to you, bro, is I said, over the next month, I said, I want you to see God in 10 different ways. And I want you to tell me about it. He was like, man, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. Bro, the next day, Michael, the next day, he called me. And he said, hey, man, you got a second to talk? I said, yeah. He said, I'm not going to take much of your time. He goes, dude, I saw God today. I said, all right, tell me what happened. So he runs an AC company. He has his own HVAC company. He said, man, I went work on this woman's home. Her AC was blown up. And he said, she's a single mom, has 3 kids, dad left. She's by herself trying to run the house, get the kids, blah, blah, blah. He said, so I did some work on her AC. And he said, something told me, like, give this woman a deal, you know? And he said, I didn't want to make, he said, I make enough money. He said, I didn't want to make any money, but he said, I didn't want to lose money either. And he said, dude, I felt so bad, dude. He said, I billed her $500 for the work. And he said, I even felt bad about doing that. He said, I felt like a dickhead. And he said, but when I sent her the bill, he said, bro, she texted me back like the crying emoji saying, oh my God, this is amazing. I thought this was going to cost me like $2,000 or $3,000. Thank you so much. This is such a blessing to us. Blah, 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 blah. Like, she just went on and on. And I said, see, dude, God used you. Now she saw God in you. And you saw God in that situation because you were open to it. Now your eyes are starting to see. And I said, practicing the presence of God's like anything else, dude. It takes practice. It takes you looking. That's why Jesus says, if you want me to answer the door, you got to knock. You want to see me in the world, you got to look. Because I am there. I am fully present every day. But we read the news, we look at the news, dude, and we think like, man, God's nowhere to be found. Bullshit, dude. He's everywhere. We don't have the eyes to see him anymore. You know what I'm saying? And that's my challenge with people is see God every day and watch him happen.
People really struggle with taking that step back and really looking like, okay, God, why am I in this situation right now?
Yeah.
Is it something self-inflicted on myself? Is there somebody I'm supposed to impact here?
Yep.
Yeah, what's happening here? Like, yeah, no, that's really good stuff. It's and like you said, Jesus is inside of us.
Yeah.
It's a simple fact of us taking that step and seeing that it's inside of us and going out and utilizing that and using that tool. And then also the savage part of it, being being loving and being violent at the same time.
There's no doubt.
Being or not violent, but being dangerous and being loving.
Yeah. There's no doubt, man. Like having the capacity.
I'd rather be one thing, I'd rather be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war.
There's no doubt about it, man. And that's the thing I think God is calling us to do is to stand at that guard, to say, you know, I have this power inside of me that is absolutely powerful. But I don't use it unless it's absolutely necessary. And we see people using power unnecessarily in situations that don't call for it. And listen, dude, if your trust is really in God, then you don't have to pass a plate at your church. You know, if your trust is really in God and his provision, you don't have to mention one word about tithing in your church. If your trust is really in God, then vote with your spiritually led conscience, right? Not, oh, I got to stay with this party line. Like, no, bro, this dude is speaking some stuff I don't agree with, man. I'm gonna back off. I might not vote or whatever. But the idea here is, again, I like what you said. I think Jordan Peterson says it too that way. Is like the most dangerous man is the quiet, and that's a good thing, right? Yeah, the weakest.
It's not the loudest.
The weakest one is going to be the loudest. And
Yep. And to piggyback off what you said, um I lost my train of thought. I was just gonna say something to what you just said, but they Democrat and Republican, that shit doesn't even matter anymore.
mm-mm,
They're all
got that right.
it's literally us versus them, and it's us trying to push back on their bullshit.
Yep.
But I do want to say, I don't have you noticed when these politicians talk, and I think it has something to do with the whole Zionist satanic thing that they got going on. They never talk about Jesus. They only refer to God. Have you ever noticed that when they're like when Trump never all the times you hear Trump talk about religion or Mike Huckabee or
Yeah.
Ted Cruz or Marco Rubio or any of these Republican or Democrat politicians, when they're speaking about religion, it's always about God. It's never about Jesus.
Yeah. Well, wait, what did Cruz say the other day? When you say Jesus is king, that's
Well, that's one of the things I wanted to get into too.
yeah. When you say Jesus is king, that's anti-Semitic, and and the charge is Jesus was anti-Semitic to that extent. Like, and he was. I think he was, to the extent that this way of thinking about God through this religious lens is absolutely erroneous and incorrect. That you are standing as gatekeepers to a God that has no gate, has no borders, has no ethnicity, has no color, has no gender, right? Like, everything about God, dude. This is my argument. I said this in class the other night with Brett. Everything we describe God, even just like the sort of systematic theology we've built around omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient, omnibenevolent. Dude, those are all. I don't think I don't think God is those things. I think we are not those things, and that's why we place them upon God. We project onto God our own limitations. So think about omnipotent. What does that mean? All powerful.
Mhm.
That's a human power is a human construction of language, right? I go to the
Right.
gym, you go to the gym, dude, we work out. I bench press X amount of weight. There's always someone who's going to be more powerful than me, right? Going to bench more than me. And so my awareness of my own limitation of power makes me think, I wonder if there's a being who's the most powerful. So I project that human limitation upon God. Think about omnipresent. What does that mean? Being everywhere. Like, I can't be at my daughter's theater performance and my son's sports game or whatever. I can't be everywhere at all times because I'm limited. But then I go, I wonder if there's a being who could be everywhere. Again, that
Mhm.
understanding of God is based not on God, but on our limitation. Omniscience, all knowing. I know a lot about philosophy, I know a lot about history, and I know a lot about humanities and civilization, but I don't know shit about math, right? But we can say, I wonder if there's a being who knows all things. Again, that's based upon human limitation. All loving, like, I love my wife, I love my children, and about 3 other people. I don't love everybody. I know I'm supposed to. But again, we place that upon God as being all loving based on human limitation. And so I think God, whatever God is, dude, it is completely other than human rationality, than human consciousness, than human experience of the world. Like, bro, animals probably have more consciousness of God than we do,
Mhm.
of nature and what God is. Like, think about when the tsunami hit, what was it, in 2004 in Sri Lanka? Everybody was freaking out. All the animals started moving to high ground before any alarm went off, before any wave would ever notice. They knew, like, something has shifted in reality, in nature, and we go on to high ground. Like,
Right.
what is that? Like, tell me what that is, dude. So I think all things that are living have some sort of connection to what God is. But we humans, because of the way our brains have evolved, like, we connect to God, what we say anthropomorphically. That's why we say the word he. He is. Like, dude, there are lots of scriptures that talk about the feministic side of God. You know what I'm saying? So whatever God is not human. But yet Jesus comes as a human to point us to the true nature of God. And what does he say? Love God and love your neighbor as yourself. And that's the heart of the whole gospel. That's the heart of God, is to be my brother's keeper, to be concerned with them, to be concerned with the other, and to be less selfish every day. That's really all it comes out to be. Is I want to be less selfish every day. Because, dude, I'm really good at being selfish.
Can you touch base real quick on the terminology, this fake terminology of Judeo-Christianity?
Yeah, I mean, it's a helpful term politically, right? To say, hey, we have these shared values because Jesus was Jewish and his understanding was of the Torah and the ethical meaning of the Torah and how he reinterpreted for us, like to show us the true meaning of the Torah. So to love my God, to love my neighbor as myself. Because think about it, you can't have ethics, dude. What do we when we talk about ethics and morality? What are we talking about? What's right? What's wrong? What's good? What's evil?
Mm-hmm.
You can't talk about that unless you talk about someone else being involved. You dig what I'm saying? Like, oh, how I treat someone else, right? Because the way you treat yourself, well, no one really cares. We always tend to treat ourselves good if we have the capacity to do that. I'm going to eat enough. I'm going to drink enough, whatever. Ethics only comes into play is when you consider the other. And that's the thing of Judeo-Christian. All of our laws in our country are based upon consideration for other people, right? That's what a democracy is. A democracy says, hey, the majority is going to rule, but we're also going to consider the minority so they don't feel oppressed, so they don't feel left out. So we're going to give them representation as well. And that's ultimately what it is. Judeo-Christianity is really just this understanding of there are certain laws, we call them, John Locke called them natural laws. You might call them divine laws if you're more religiously oriented. And that's where the Judeo-Christian ideal comes from, is that we as humans have an inherent value of life, of freedom, of pursuing a freedom for ourselves, And the Judeo-Christian ethic is simply just saying, we're going to construct laws around this religious sort of grounding that considers everyone's needs and everyone's liberty and everyone's freedom. That's really all that boils down. So it's politically helpful, but
It sounds good politically.
But theologically, dude, let's be honest. Christianity and Judaism are different. Completely different.
Right.
Absolutely different theologies. Like worlds apart. And because we don't agree on the nature of God, we don't agree on the Messiah or who the Savior is. And that's why, again, going back to Cruz's statement, saying Jesus is King is a Christian statement. It is not a Judaistic statement. It's not a Islamic statement. So
if I say Jesus is king to a Jewish person and they got offended and we were having a conversation, that's on them. Like if you're easily offended by different things, like if I tell you you're doing something wrong at work and I don't agree with it and you get offended by that, that's on you.
That's right.
You're weak.
It's
not me.
It's like one of my favorite comedians is Anthony Jeselnik. I don't know if you watch Anthony.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's dark comic, dude. He makes you laugh at stuff you probably shouldn't laugh at, but it's funny.
Right.
And I remember sitting here watching that with my brother, and he was like, "Man, that joke's offensive." And I went, "No, it ain't. It's funny to me. It's offensive to you, but it's funny to me." And I said,
don't be weak.
And I said, don't try to universalize something that is subjective. You dig what I'm saying? And so when I say Jesus is king, I realize that is highly subjective to the individual. But to me, it's the truth that I hold. You know what I'm saying? You may not hold that same truth, and it's not a truth I can prove scientifically or empirically, but it's a truth that I hold, because of how it affects my life in a positive way. Saying Jesus is king is not an exclusive statement to say I'm in, you're out. It's a subjective statement that says I want to be better every day. I want to be more like this man every day. I want to model my life as a father, as a husband every day after this man. And that's the thing, dude. And we get that wrong. Like even when Jesus says, those who come in my name, my name, my name, we've equated the name of Jesus with the person of Jesus. And I get that. But when I say I pray in the name of Jesus, like Jesus isn't here, bro. He's not here. You know where he's here. And it's the characteristics, the attribute, the personality, the morality of Christ that I come in the name of. Not in the person of Jesus, but in the meaning of Jesus, if that makes sense. You know?
Right.
So Judeo-Christian is a politically convenient,
man-made statement.
It's politically convenient, but it's theologically inaccurate. Like, because
right.
Yeah, they're different worlds apart. So.
That this is kind of off topic, but that bill again that they've been trying to pass in Israel since like 2022, where you can't talk about Jesus publicly,
Yeah,
or you get 1 year in prison. It's up for they're voting on it again with everything that's going on with the two governments back and forth and all the things that we know, and us, giving billions of dollars to Israel, and APAC having so much control over our congressmen and politicians. Do you ever see them trying to pass that in the United States?
Maybe. I say let them, because Jesus even says, "Man, they will persecute you because of me. They will throw you in prison because of me." And I go, let them do it, because
bring it on, motherfuckers.
Dude, bring it on. If that law passes and becomes law,
I'll be talking about Jesus every day, like I do now.
Every day. Because what will happen is there will be an uprising against that law. And again, dude,
that's when we'll need to be our strongest.
Exactly. That's where we have to take responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And I say this all the time. Sometimes the things we want most in life are found down a path we least want to travel. And for me, becoming more Christ-like often means I got to go the long way around. I got to go the hard. I choose the hard road, and I watch God work magnificently through that. And that's just God in my estimation. Like,
that's with anything.
Everything in life requires pain to some extent, to some level, right? Whether it's like, man, I am 50 pounds overweight. How do I get back in shape? Guess what that's going to cost you? Some sweat, some hard work, some tears, some doubt, you know what I'm saying?
Starting a business.
Oh, bro, like it's going to.
That's the hardest shit. Being a good husband, being a good father.
Dude, it's everything worth doing is hard to do. It's hard to do, but it's not always going to be hard. You know what I'm saying? Like, dude, moving to Florida was the hardest thing I've ever done. The hardest thing. Trusting God, going, okay, man, my children are in Dallas. My friends are in Dallas. My life is in Dallas. But there's this crazy church called Suncoast who I feel this pulling towards, knowing that, man, if I step into this, man, God is going to do some awesome things in my life and in this community through me. What do we do? And honestly, Mike, there were things that had to line up that even Esther and I are like, this would be a miracle if this lines up. And dude, guess what happened? It lined up. And God says, I'm going to take care of these little things. You need to take care of the big thing. And that is, you're going to have to go through the pain and the challenge and the growth process to see what I'm giving you a vision for. And dude, we are seeing it. Like, dude, the church has essentially doubled in size since I've been. Like, for all intents and purposes, it has doubled in size. And Sunday morning attendance, my first Easter there, because again, we're coming up on Easter. My first Easter there, we had, I think it was 1,400 or 1,500 people. Last year, dude, we had 2,700 people. This year, we're probably going to push over 3,000.
And you don't even talk about tithing or serving.
Oh, no, dude, no. We just say, hey, you can serve if you want. You can tithe if you want. But the money we take in, because of the way our business structure is, because the church is a business to some extent, and that you have employees who do services, who provide ministries that you want to take care of. But the way Dr. Bacham has it set up, it's brilliant. You know, we don't need to take money in. And so any money we do take in from tithing goes back into the community. We gave away 35 cars last year.
That's my favorite thing is the car thing. I tell my wife, and I want to, one of the things is in my business is to make as much money as I can so I can buy cars for the
Yeah.
church.
We had a guy, I'm not going to name him, but one of the guys that I'm really good friends with at the church, he and I are very close. Uh, his wife is a big time CEO in Tampa. He's a retired. He was a referee for the MLS. Like he would send me pictures.
Nice.
He would send me pictures of him setting up the ball for Lionel Messi in Miami and stuff. It's pretty cool.
That's cool.
Now he's retired. He's younger than me, and he came up to me, man, the other day. He goes, "Hey, God prompted me. We want to buy a car for somebody." And I said, "All right, let's go talk to the boss." So we went to Larry, and sure enough, dude bought a new car, and we were able to give it away. And again, that's just one automobile.
That's freaking sweet.
So cool.
That's so cool.
Yeah, we change about what 30 cars every month. So do the math. 30 times 12. It's over 300 cars per year. We do oil changes for free in the community.
I told a buddy of mine that about the oil changes because we got that shop back there with the lifts and stuff, and he's like, "Dude, that's so cool." Like we were talking about, like, tithing to that. Like he's like, "Oh, I would think consider tithing to that or whatever because that's just such a cool thing or whatever." So
and again, that's just the two we as a church provide, but we also support 6 other ministries. Like we give money each month to Blaze of Hope, which is they provide finances for families who have children who have cancer. Like they give those families, I think it's like $1,000 to help with groceries or whatever. We support Adventure for All. Like that's like people who have cognitive learning differences. Like we support that ministry because it gives these kids a chance. Like I did a sermon a while back on one of the guy's stories. He was told he'd never walk, he'd never ride a bike. And yet Chase Petty, who runs Adventure for All, like, bro, got him on a bike and got him riding. And dude, you see the parents' response to that. So it's not just that we give away cars, do oil changes. We support other ministries where God is already working as well.
right.
That's most of the stuff you don't hear about, which I wish we would do a better job of like showcasing that sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, man.
Yeah. Man, I appreciate you. This was amazing. You're awesome.
I love you, dude.
Freaking
Appreciate you having me on again.
love you too, bro. Yeah, well, last time we were just talking about the church. This time we got, more into the whole Israel stuff, and
Yeah.
because no pastors ever talk about this. They only talk about the other stuff and why Israel's our greatest ally, and why you should tithe 20% to God, and why you should do this, and why you should do that, and God doesn't love you if you don't do this, and it's all bullshit.
Yep. God loves you, period, man. No strings attached. Even
Right.
if you are a Zionist, God loves you. If you're anti-Zionist, God loves you. And we can be mistaken on some things, and still sometimes we have to learn. We learn best by getting it wrong first.
That's right.
All right, bro.
I appreciate you, bro. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, man.
Y'all take it easy. Bye.